Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 4 for today. I'm probably going to bust into a 5th part for sure after this one, so check it out. Alright, it's Tuesday, February 26, 2013. I'm ready to go. Membership of EU Defense Club cost millions. The cash-strapped Ministry of Defense was under fire last night after Britain renews its membership of a European Army agency at a cost of $3.3 million. That's enough to run a battalion of more than 1,200 soldiers for a year, or pay the immediate repair of 300 Army homes. It says the decision has dumbfounded analysts and senior soldiers. Throwing £3.3 million away on European defense when we are part of NATO and have no wish to ever join a pan-European army is indefensible in this age of austerity. This comes a week after Defense Secretary Hammond quietly renewed Britain's membership of the European Defence Agency, a club of 26 European or EU states which has the express intention of forming a pan-European defence force. EU approves 500-strong military mission in Mali. Remember this article? European Union has formally given the go-ahead to launch a 500-strong military mission in Mali to support France and basically in its war on the West African country for resources, which I didn't know this before, but I guess France, 75% of their energy comes from nuclear, and I believe it's uranium that they're looking for in Niger. So, and just recently, U.S. just had troops there, 100 troops, and now they have setting up a drone base. So, France defense minister rejects talks of Mali withdrawal. So the recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize says here that he rejected any talk of pulling its troops out of Mali in the near future, saying the troops are involved in a very violent fighting in the mountains of northern part of the African country. This, of course, is related to their actions in Libya, which maybe that's what the point of it was, to create instability and have all weapons flown from Libya and jihadists from there to flow into Mali in that area. Dagger brigade readies for AFRICOM missions. Remember we were talking about the U.S. was openly ready to start deploying to all these African nations, a lot basically, most of them. Some 4,000 soldiers of the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division out of Fort Riley, Kansas, are training for realignment to U.S. AFRICOM, expected later this year. The Dagger Brigade, as it's known, will be the first brigade to regionally be aligned to the U.S. Africa Command, or AFRICOM. The U.S. Pacific Command has had units regionally aligned to its area of responsibility with similar training at Fort Irwin earlier this year. And this is, of course, about the drawdown in Afghanistan, even though just right after they said that they were leaving, that they're going to keep troops beyond 2014, so for whatever the hell that's worth. Then we have West Africa flooded with Libyan weapons. An estimated 10,000 to 20,000 Libyan firearms have been trafficked to other African nations, the UN reported. Ousted ruler Muammar Gaddafi's uncontrolled arsenal is reportedly a major source of instability in Mali and the entire region. So, Monday report, organized crime in West Africa focused on the flow of assault rifles from Libyan stocks to rebels of Mali, revealing that the 2,000 Tuareg mercenaries recently returned from Libya carrying at least their own weapons. So, we've already talked about them. So I guess it depends on what you want to call terrorists, because you have the Tuaregs that want their national autonomy in the northern region that they've wanted for a long time, who are willing to work with these basically Islamic extremists and or Al-Qaeda linked groups, and they want Sharia law. That's what they want, a theocracy. And then of course you have the Malian central government. So I mean, the biggest deal are these quote Muslim extremists, because the Tuaregs, if they just get what they want from the central government, they won't fight them anymore. They won't fight the central government. But the thing is that you got these Muslim extremists that are pretty much creating this whole instability. But that's kind of the catch-22, is that they're going to use force to get what they want. It's like if that's what the people want, if they want Sharia law, if they want strict Muslim country, or themed country, then I guess they should have it, right? But with the central government, the Malian government, it's done by force too. So it's whatever these people get, it's going to be done by force. It's going to be forced on them. Al-Qaeda sought to establish low-profile Islamist state in northern Mali. So this is a leader of the Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, as they say, advised his group to be careful not to draw attention of the international community to his plans. So it goes on here that this is according to a document uncovered in Timbuktu and believed to bear the signature of the group's leader. He wanted to establish an Islamist state in the region in northern Mali. So this individual drew a vision of the new state he planned to establish, and that vision appeared to be different from that typically adopted by the Islamic extremists. So as he was talking about mistakes committed by his fellow fighters, who especially the quick application of the strict Islamic punishment against those who violated Islamic laws. Then you have U.S. Congress, fight terrorism and arm the terrorists. If anything demonstrates the real depths of insanity that the U.S. foreign policy has, it is when lawmakers try to outflank the executive branch by proposing something even more destructive and outright stupid than the existing policy. They like to call it getting tough, as if it says witness this weekend's appearance by the representative from New York's 16th Congressional District, Elliot Engel, demanding the president's already destructive policy of covert support for the rebels in Syria, most of whom happen to be foreign jihadists, become an overt and expanded policy, so it should be the norm. Quote, I will be introducing legislation to allow the president to arm the rebels, he said. I think it's about time to do that. So maybe he didn't get the memo that they're already doing that. So this Mr. Engel strongly supports the state of Israel. He says that it would result in a gusher of arms flowing to the fastest growing Al-Qaeda front in the world, attracting fighters from across the Islamic world. It says, what will Mr. Engel then propose when the bearded radicals finally overthrow the secular Assad and install Sharia law or Sharia rule in Syria? Does he support Sharia? Or will such a worse turn of events help ignite passions in the U.S. for yet more military action in the Middle East to rid out the problems caused by the victory of Mr. Engel's allies in Syria? Then, of course, it will be on Iran. It says, in the meantime, who will be to blame for Mr. Engel's allies' repeated attacks on civilians in neighborhoods that refuse to join the uprising? And is it not also terrorism for the rebels to blow up neighborhoods that refuse to join their uprising, or in any manner of civilian slaughter to be justified by Mr. Engel, as long as the goal of regime change is realized? And then what? Next up, we have Mali. Islamists have power of an army. So in northern Mali, they have destruction power of an army. A top Malian colonel says his weapons seized in Gao since French-led forces retook the city last month were displayed. What we've got here is indicative of an army or groups that have the capacity of an army, said the commander, showing a stockpile of weapons. The Al-Qaeda-linked armed Islamists have occupied the city, the North's largest city, for 9 months before the French and Malian forces retook it on January 26th. So how do they get this army? Mali's Islamic radicals recruiting child soldiers at schools. This is the second article I've seen, but the most recent, February 23rd, says radical Islamic fighters showed up at Muhammad Salih's Quranic school, the school of the Quran, armed with weapons and manning to address his students. So basically went on there and said how to wage a holy war. He wrote in Arabic, how to terrorize the enemy in combat. The lesson plan continued on his little blackboard. Which is interesting because remember this from February 5th, 2013, Obama waives Bush law banning child soldiers. So I'm not saying, yay, everybody celebrate Bush, but it goes on here and says, here's a headline we'll guarantee you simply won't find the mainstream media. On October 3rd, 2008, George Bush signed into law Child Soldiers Prevention Act of 2008, a law that made it a federal crime to recruit or use soldiers under the age of 15. It also gave the United States authority to prosecute, deport, or deny entry to individuals who have knowingly recruited children as soldiers. Over the weekend, while most Americans were too busy spending time with their children and keeping up on the latest sporting events to worry about executive orders, President Obama removed the teeth from this law, effectively making it void in the nation's most guilty. The result is thousands of children throughout the Middle East and Africa may be drafted into foreign militaries with the full blessings of the United States. Then we have Israel playing dirty game in troubled Africa. It says Israel commentators are making much of the diplomatic opportunity afforded by France's military intervention in Mali. The Zionist state has long been keen to establish a foothold in parts of Africa for strategic as well as economic reasons. The vast continent offers relatively accessible and increasingly fought over sources of energy and water, as well as emerging markets. It says here, while Israel has been able to establish diplomatic relationships with most non-Muslim and African countries, nations such as Mali and Niger have so far refused to formally recognize it. What they're trying to do is they're trying to create a potential rear guard of these black Africans against hostile Arab nations in the north by doing what the Zionists do well, which is pitting people against each other, creating and exploiting anti-Arab feeling. Then you have Pakistan president to visit Iran to sign oil refinery deal. So I guess apparently after like a million times, they're going to actually do this against the U.S.'s wishes or threats. Pakistani president is traveling to Tehran on Wednesday to finalize a major deal for Iran to build an oil refinery in its eastern neighbor. I'm only reporting on this because they're saying that he's actually going to travel there to sign it. So, but it goes on here and it says that according to official sources, Zardari plans to sign an oil refinery deal worth $4 billion with Tehran while also discussing Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline project that will carry Iran's natural gas to its eastern neighbor. We have German Chancellor meets Turkish leaders over EU membership bid. So this is interesting. I don't know if you remember this, but it goes on here and it talks about on Monday Merkel met with Prime Minister Erdogan of Turkey and Abdulgal in the Turkish capital in Ankara on the second and final day of their visit. So basically it said here that the German Chancellor had said she was skeptical about Turkey's membership in the European bloc. Although I am skeptical, I have approved the continuation of the membership discussions, Merkel said, adding that these negotiations have stalled a little recently and I am in favor of opening a new chapter in these talks so that we can advance. So the date of this, of course, is the 25th of February. This is from January 28th, 2013, Turkey. With EU talks stalled, Erdogan suggests Ankara might join SCO. So that's why she's going to give lip service or, to suck up to them, whatever. It's because they want to get into the EU and they're talking about going to SCO. And they got exactly what they wanted. Turkey, that is. Then we have Iraqi Kurdish president's trip to Russia sparks weapons and oil controversy. It made news as a historic visit to Russia, but Iraqi Kurdish president's first trip to Russia sparked controversy. He was speaking in Moscow. The president has reportedly admired the Kalashnikov rifle and announced that Kurdistan is ready to buy weapons that Russia may offer. But they must get Baghdad's permission to buy the Russian weapons first. The U.S. gives banking green light to Myanmar tycoons. The two banks owned by tycoons associated with Myanmar's former military regime will start to do business with U.S. companies and investors in the latest reward for the southeast country's rapid political transformation. And really, what does it have anything to do with? It's countering China's influence. That's all it has to do with. So it helps remove uncertainty among U.S. companies over these lingering restrictions on their dealings in Myanmar and is expected to increase domestic reach of the U.S. credit card firms Visa and MasterCard, along with exploring opportunities in the resource-rich nation. So it says here that the inclusion of the formerly blacklisted banks was a surprise given the previous U.S. assurances that they, quote, still had their eye on the worst offenders of the past regime, end quote. Western exceptionalism crumbling as Aussie senator deported from Malaysia. So what does that mean? The senator was to meet with Wall Street London funded Fao Democracy Front Barish IMF frontman Anwar Ibrahim. So the Australian reported in its article that Xenophon deported by Malaysia, that Australian Senator Nick Xenophon has been detained and then deported in Malaysia as part of an unofficial parliamentary delegation to review the electoral system. So in reality, this senator was part of a Western effort to assist Malaysia's Wall Street London-backed opposition into power as part of a wider geopolitical strategy to align Southeast Asia against China's emerging regional influence. Despite Barish's best efforts to portray himself as political, it is clearly led for and by Malaysia's U.S.-backed opposition with the IMF's Ibrahim leading the coalition. So you see here this Anwar Ibrahim, the IMS dude, can be speaking to a Barish rally in Malaysia. Barish, of course, is admittedly funded by the U.S. State Department through the National Endowment for Democracy. Finishing up, in the face of coming budget cuts, U.S. frees illegal immigrants from custody. The federal government released groups of illegal immigrants from custody across the country on Monday. At the same time, the White House was making its case that impending budget cuts would harm efforts to protect border and enforce federal immigration laws. Advocates reported waves of illegal immigrants being released from at least 3 detention centers in Texas, Florida, and Louisiana. But like I said, contracts to the military-industrial complex, the pharmaceutical companies, to the agri companies, they're going to keep flowing. 53% of U.S. wants illegal immigration or immigrants deported. Senators mold biometric ID requirements for federal workers. Some 53% of American citizens broadly support deportation for illegal immigrants, with 30% saying most should be deported and 23% saying all should be sent away. Thank you.